opportunities and not quite sure how to connect with them. Why? Because they don't have the skills that they need to enter into this job market. They don't have the skills that they need to start businesses of their own. So KCB Foundation saw this and said, you know what, we can do something about this. And under the Judiciary program, they said, you know what we're going to do? 6 months, we'll teach you, whether it is construction, whether it is basic plumbing, whether it is some parts of journalism, beauty, there's design, all sorts of things that you can actually now get connected with. You do that for 6 months. You come out of that 6 months later and you get a toolkit, you get a micro grant that you can either start your own business or join somebody in work because they have partners throughout the country in different counties. There is a myriad of things you can do after having gone through this 6 months training program. And so making sure that the numbers of the unemployed are reduced significantly. KCB has done this for over 150,000 people between the age of 18 and 35 so far. And those numbers are still climbing. You can be part of this program. You need to log on to www.kcbgroup.com/foundation and find out what's being done there under the Judiciary program. And you too can be part of that. All right, we're getting into it, and I know that you're joining us on our different platforms, on our streaming platforms of YouTube and Facebook, as well as on X, and this morning on KTN, as well as our radio around the country, and indeed around the world. It is Justice Thursday, and we will be, we already joined, we're speaking in the present. The Honourable Paul Ndemo is the Deputy Chief Registrar, and most recently, the Judiciary Chairperson, I beg your pardon, spokesperson. And he's here with us this morning again. Honorable Ndemo, good morning.
Good morning to you, Ndu.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
And a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
You're doing well?
Yes, I am.
And you're here wearing a different hat. As
yes.
the brand new, we can see the ribbons and everything. As the brand new Judiciary spokesperson.
Yes.
So, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And as we move into this conversation, we'll be talking about Dialogue Day, Judiciary Dialogue Day, of course, and, conversations with the consumers of justice.
Yeah.
So maybe we can start with a couple of definitions and those things as we get into it, and, just give us an overview of that.
Yeah.
But let's welcome you properly. And, CT will even congratulate you by sharing today's proverb. And then even after we've congratulated you, we'll put you to work and ask you to please, translate the proverb and tell us what you think about it.
I hope it will be in English.
Well, it's CT, so you can only hope. Only until the words fall from his mouth.
Just for kicks, let's do it in Swahili.
Until the words fall. Yeah, this would be fun.
Swahili is an acceptable communication language in Kenya.
Do not.
I brought that on myself.
No. Do not be influenced by the enthusiasm of these two. I am going to read it in English.
Okay.
If they wish to translate it into Kiswahili, they can do so.
They can do so. All right.
Yes. So,
and we shall.
Yes, exactly. Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the United Republic of Tanzania.
Tanzania.
Yes.
Okay.
An empty sack cannot stand. A full sack cannot bend.
Gunia lisilo la kitu halisimami. Gunia lililojaa halipindiki.
Gunia lililojaa
halipindiki.
Yes. Haya. Sawa. Let's go with the English for now.
Okay, there we go.
I think at the Pindiki, that's where we lost him. He was doing okay.
Until the Pindiki.
Yes. Gunia he got.
To pinda is to bend.
To bend.
Yes.
All right, good. So my understanding of that is, first I grew up in a farming community. So I've done some growing of maize and all. And after the harvest, you put in maize in the sack. When it is dry, you put it in the sack. And so when the sack is filled up, then now going by what you've said, it doesn't collapse. The way I'll check it is when you are together as a community, as a people, there's a lot you can do. There are things that you can do as a community that you cannot do if you are alone. And so part of the thing that I remember growing up, sometimes those sacks were actually used as props for you to stand on the sack to get to do something else. You can't do that on an empty sack because there's nothing. Yeah. So there is power in unity. And maybe that speaks to us as a community, as a nation. There is power. We can accomplish much more together as a community.
Indeed. Wow. Okay. I like this today. So as we start to get into Judiciary Dialogue Day, I'm very curious as to why it was necessary to have Judiciary Dialogue Day in the first place. The courts speak to us. The judicial system speaks to us every day in one way or another. And whether we're communicated to, whether we're able to give feedback, totally different story, but we're speaking every day. So why was it necessary to have, or why is it necessary to have a day on its own where the courts, or where the judiciary is speaking to its consumers?
Yeah. First, let me start by saying it's really been great having the Thursday justice. Every Thursday just coming here. But you reckon that there is a very limited number that gets to hear what happens in the court. The justice conversations is not that many people. And so one of the ways we thought that we can get this out there is to have these dialogues across the country. And we do have, at the moment, we have what we call judiciary open days across our 140 plus court stations across the country. But these are planned, at different times. And so the courts engage members of the public, just talk about the courts, what we do, and that sort of thing. But we felt that it was important to have something that was coordinated this year, so that we have a conversation happening at the same time across the entire republic. And really the purpose is to engage the public, get to share what are the services that we are offering, sort of to demystify. Demystify what the court is.
Yes.
For those who have interacted with the courts like yourselves and others, it might look like it's normal thing. But I think to the average mwananchi, there's still some mystery around the court. And so this is just an effort to try to, just demystify that. Yeah.
What would you reckon are some of the issues that you would be having from people to ask questions about, or are unaware about, that they would come out in their numbers to want to know more of?
Certainly one of the big issues would be why the cases are taking long, questions around processes, some of the processes in court, which you find maybe an individual might think that it is the court that is causing, for example, a delay or, dealing with a matter in a particular way. But then now when mwananchi comes and then they want to find out, so what am I supposed to do when I have been charged with a traffic case? Is there a difference between a criminal case and a civil case? When I am charged with a case, do I go to this court or this other court? Is it the High Court? Is it the Magistrates Court? Is it the Qadhi's Court? Are there courts where I can take my small claim? I have, someone owes me 70,000 shillings. Do I want to put myself in the system and I'm not sure how long it's going to take? How long would it take to adjudicate over my matter that is only 70,000 or 100,000 shillings? So I think the issue about delays, the issue about the different court processes, the court structure itself, and obviously also just following up on personal matters. People might feel like I filed my case here 2 years ago. I need to just get some direction as to where we are at.
Can I suggest one of the other issues might be, because like you say, we've had a Justice Thursday conversation for years every week. And one of the things that doesn't cease to be mentioned, even if it's not the subject matter that is at hand, is the whole issue of public defense and not being able to make bail or bond for whatever reason, and people being remanded.
Yes.
And folks want to ask the courts, okay, so, how are we going to deal with that?
Yes.
So those are one of the things that come out that people want to know. How can somebody be, in jail, not in prison, for 2 years because they've not been able to make bail of whatever, or because somebody has not defended them in court?
Yeah.
They don't know their rights. People are wanting to know, how do you fix things like that, and to be able to hear once and for all, okay, so what do we do?
Yeah.
What about the people who are still in, who could have been at home trying to raise the 10,000 shillings or trying to raise the 5,000 shillings?
That's true. So we are opening the doors. This is completely open. So come to court, ask whatever question you want to ask, whether it's on bail and bond. You see, for some of these things, and we actually have policies. We have a bail and bond policy that talks about instances when bail may be given. Of course, there is the discretion of the magistrate or the judge to give that. But as you correctly point out, sometimes it's still hanging out there, it's still mysterious, and people wonder, so in what instances do I get, what kind of securities do I need to give? But then we are giving an opportunity so that a member of the public just come and ask any question that is bothering you, and we will be at hand to answer that question. So whether you are, driving past a court station, you can just drive in there and, be part of the congregation that is asking questions. Whether you are walking past, wherever it is, we are opening it up so that we can have that discussion. Judiciary is for the people. In fact, it is by the people, for the people.
Yeah.
That is the opening line when you talk about judicial authority. That the judiciary is by the people, for the people.
Right.
Yeah.
The judiciary, for the longest time, has been the boogeyman that you scare people with. Anyone hears of any matter that ends up in court, you conjure up the worst possible images.
Yeah.
And over time, the judiciary has most certainly and definitively looked at ways of not mollifying the citizenry, but getting them to understand exactly how they function, what they do. And Judiciary Day is one of the ways in which they do this. My question: how do you measure the success of days like Judiciary Days? And how do you put these measurements against the measurement that the court has in determining the performance of its officers?
That's a great question. So, first of all, broadly speaking, we actually have an annual evaluation, which we call the performance measurement understanding, that we use to measure what is the performance of a particular court. And this is done for everybody, irrespective of rank, right from the lowest magistrate to the highest judges in the different courts. And part of the parameters that we actually use in that is the customer service. What is it that you are doing at the station level? We call them court stations. What are you doing at the court station? How are you interacting with the customer? And once in a while, we actually do surveys so that we're able to get now direct feedback from our stakeholders to ask them, how are we doing in terms of our service? What is the speed of service that we are giving you? Are you satisfied? What are some of the areas of improvement? And in this particular dialogue day that we're having tomorrow across the country, we actually want to have a survey after that so that we ask the members of the public, because this is really, we are being very open and very forthright with the public. We want to tell them, can you tell us what are the pain points that you have? Have you had instances where somebody has asked you for a bribe, for example, in the court here? What are the problems you have experienced here? I see you smiling. I don't know whether that is a...
No. A bad or good omen.
It doesn't look like a very good omen.
I smiled because when you mentioned the bribe, I'm thinking of a facetious question. It says, did you consider the bribe they asked for reasonable, or was it excessive? That's why I was smiling. Yes, that's why I was smiling. But then go on.
Yeah. So then we would want them to give us feedback, so that we get to know how was this, and we are trying to make it as open as possible. In fact, in some of the court stations, our courts are actually going to go into the markets, because that is the better place for them to be able to engage the courts. Now, some of the experiences we've had in the past is that we've said we have open days and welcome members of the public to come so that we can have this engagement. And you find members of the public are standing outside the court premises. Because someone thinks, if I get into this court...
And they lock that gate.
And they lock this gate.
I won't come out.
You know, they might know that I have a problem.
It could be fueled by the imagery, because think about it, that the mere mention of somebody says, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to take you to the court. The fear that grips people is monumental.
That's true.
Without the realization that, maybe it was actually a good idea for you to go to court, because you find yourself maybe wanting to pay somebody off, and maybe you would actually have gone to court and you would have been one in the right, for example.
That's very true.
So are these not opportunities for them to open that up and say, you know what, if somebody says, I'm going to take you to court, say, well,
that's good.
Let's go.
That's good.
That's
the idea, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
We want to try and demystify this thing.
And speaking of demystifying and feedback, I happened yesterday to, as we were preparing for today, to just decide to go through social media. And the court and lawyers are like yin and yang. And I think for the last month or so, there has been a tussle between the presidency of the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court in whole and certain councils. Now, in the eyes of the public, when they see that play, there is definitely a question arising in the minds of the people. And that's the elephant in the room, where fellows who cannot exist without each other, it's almost as if the lawyers will say the bench is corrupt, but if the bench is corrupt, the bar must be the one doing the corrupting.
The bench doesn't go out looking for cases.
Yes.
Cases are brought to them.
Exactly. So what exactly is this that is going on? What is this tussle? Because when you read it, lay people, we don't know what's going on. What is this tussle? And even better, newly minted spokesperson, how are you speaking to these naysayers?
Thank you for that, Mike. Let me say that, you see, one of the reasons why we really want to engage the way we're engaging, the way we are now,
Yes.
is so that there can also be a better understanding of what is the role of the court.
Yes.
Because sometimes when there is a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation, then you find people getting to conclusions that then are not, are not accurate. So I cannot speculate for now why there is such vitriol, honestly, against the judiciary.
And the term vitriol is quite correct. It seems
it is really strong, and in our case, it's really unfortunate because if indeed there are issues, then you don't burn down the granary because you found some cockroaches. You don't burn the granary and then you say, we are going to build a new granary. You deal with the small issues that are there and then you move on. But I think the way some of the issues are actually being ventilated does not really serve the better and wider interests of the country. We really have to be mindful about the country. We have to be mindful about posterity. We have got the rule of law. We have got very clear ways of dealing with problems. So if it comes out that, we are fighting a particular institution, To what end?
Yeah.
And there was so much pain that was taken by the framers of the Constitution to ensure that there was a separation of different actors, different arms of government, different institutions, also that there are proper checks and balances. And that balance is a very delicate balance, and it should not be, just spoiled for reasons that when you look at it on the face, you wonder, what exactly are we dealing with here?
And that brings me to my second question. There's something called the Judiciary Ombudsman.
Yes.
And then there's the JSC.
Yes.
Why aren't these institutions at the fore of, if the complaints are valid, why aren't these institutions, the Office of the Ombudsman and the Office and the Judicial Service Commission, are being activated? Because for me, as a layperson, it is very confusing, honestly, what is being said. But my understanding is that there are institutions that exist to resolve such issues. Yeah. So what's exactly happening?
Yeah. So those institutions are indeed there. We have the Judiciary Ombudsman. Yes, I will.
Yes.
I will do exactly that. The Judiciary Ombudsman Office, in fact, is headed by none other than the Honorable Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic. That is how serious that function has been taken by the judiciary.
Yes.
And what that office does is to look at complaints that have, that emanate from across the country on a very wide range of issues. And so when those complaints are brought, whether it is about, service, delivery, performance, some kind of misconduct, then that team is activated and investigates those matters. Then those can be escalated depending on the severity, whether now to the Chief Justice to be dealt with at an administrative level, or to the Judicial Service Commission. So the Judicial Service Commission comes now to deal with serious cases of misconduct, and this could, range from, warnings where there has been some conduct but significant enough to be escalated to the commission, up to the point of dismissal, or even recommending a tribunal in the case of judges to the president for removal. So the commission is seized with that particular mandate, and that is what it does to ensure that we have that accountability. So both institutions exist and are working, dealing with the particular issues that, that are there.
Has the office of the Ombudsman, because that has more direct access to the smaller complaints, actually done any punishments, any administrative actions against certain judicial officers?
Yes, quite a bit actually, I must add.
Okay.
Because out of that we have, they do things like spot checks, for example. Just go around the courts, you hear there's a complaint in a particular court, maybe in Kajiado. And without even notice, they may just do a spot check, come and verify whether what is being complained about is true, and then take action. So we have many cases where complaints have been received of whatever nature. Sometimes they are processed, because sometimes they could just be administrative issues.
Yeah.
So there's a complaint about a staff member or a magistrate who doesn't come to work. That matter is then escalated to the Chief Justice. A process is then initiated to confirm all those facts, and then depending on the outcome of that investigation, the person could receive a warning, or eventually they could actually just be dismissed if it is a persistent problem. And we've had many of such cases done by the ombudsperson. So it's a variety of different complaints and issues that come. Yeah.
So we're going to go to break in a minute, but just before we do that, so these conversations take place. The assumption is that folks from the public come and say, look, I have an issue with this. This is what I want to clarify. From what I understand, the very reason behind this is to open it up and let it be transparent in terms of ongoings within the judiciary. So what then do you do after you hear these issues from folks? what do you do with that information, and how do you say we're going to address this? One of those issues being one of the things that we've seen most recently, and I asked this question yesterday to a lawyer, and I said, court orders, for example, are binding, are they not?
Yeah.
They said yes.
Yeah.
I said, the law is supreme, especially that of the Constitution. Is it? Yes. So when the court, as an arm of government, not the forgotten stepsister, as an arm of government, full arm of government, says certain things must happen under, His Honor Ndemo. This is the order that has been given, for example.
Yes.
And if I, Ndu, or CT as an individual, fails to honor a court order, I would be in the back of a truck, real quick, held in contempt of court. But it would appear as though there are others for which, it's a little bit more lenient.
No, it's a suggestion.
It's just like, I've given a court order and I've told you must do this. It's like, okay, yeah, well, the wind is blowing. Let's see where it'll blow.
Think about it.
I can think about it and do whatever I want to do with it. It seems as though the speculation is rife, Honorable Ndemo, that there are certain people for which court orders are serious, and then there are certain people for which court orders are a suggestion. You really don't have to abide by them if you don't feel like, on a Wednesday afternoon. That's speculation. Yeah. And it's amongst very, very many Kenyans today. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. How do you deal with that?
You correctly said that we are all bound by the Constitution, by the law. In fact, there's a very specific provision in the Constitution that in either the formulation of policy, in the implementation of a law, we must bear in mind and apply the Constitution. And in particular, if you're a public servant, then that is even more serious for you. So the understanding is that anything that you are supposed to do that is lawful, and particularly when an issue like a court order comes to whoever it is, that court order must be adhered to. In fact, there is even case law that stipulates very clearly that even where you think that court order is void, or where you think that court order is not proper, you are still bound to obey that court order.
What if you were busy attending to other matters?
Court order takes precedence. You're supposed to follow and obey that court order. Because failing to do that, then you start creating a situation where you are undermining the authority of the court. When you undermine judicial authority, which, as I told you at the beginning, actually is derived from the people, you are undermining the very foundation of the society. So it is absolutely important for public officers, for state officers, when a court order has been given, you need to comply with that court order. You don't need to, you don't need anybody to whip you and follow you to do that. It is taken, you need to do that.
All right. Yeah. The Honourable Paul Ndemo is our guest this hour on Justice Thursday, the Deputy Chief Registrar as well as the Judiciary spokesperson. And we're having conversations this hour about judiciary dialogue conversations, and then what they do with those conversations as members of the public come out tomorrow to say these are our issues. And we'll take a break at this point and continue with the Honourable Ndemo right after this. Good morning. It's 24 to 9.
Are you ready to become the next biggest music star? Do you have what it takes to compete with the best of the best? Oh, yeah! And walk away with over 1 million Kenya shillings in grand prizes. Auditions are open for Kenya's Star Search on Saturday 1st February and Sunday 2nd February at the Nairobi City Hall Charter Hall from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Come through and show us what you're made of. Proudly sponsored by
Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Hey friends! Akili feels scared to play football after missing a goal. But in La La Land, her friends show her how to face her fears. With courage and practice, Achilles scores and discovers the joy of trying again.
So this is why you're scared to play football again? Uh-huh. Achilles, you know you're good at football, right? I am? Yes. But sometimes you may not score a goal. This may make you feel scared and hurt. Oh, it is okay to feel scared and hurt, but it is also good to try again.
We value your feedback and welcome your comments, queries, and complaints regarding our content. You can get in touch with us via SMS on 22151, call 0719012450, or email feedback@standardmedia.co.ke. Our PO Box number is 30080-00100, Nairobi, or deliver it to our offices at Standard Group Center, Mombasa Road, Nairobi.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Demo is our guest for Justice Thursday today, the Deputy Chief Registrar as well as Judiciary spokesperson. And we're looking into judiciary conversations, an open day to have Kenyans come and ask questions that they do have.
Yes. So one of the things that I think Kenyans are mixed up about, and some of the conversations allude to as if the Supreme Court is responsible and in charge of every decision the courts make. Basically saying that the corruption they insinuate is that the Supreme Court can influence the Court of Appeal and the Court of Appeal, the High Court. Please define for Kenyans what is the structure of the judiciary? How do judges have independence of decision? And confirm to us whether Martha Koome can call Magistrate Ndu and say, by the way, there is that silver fox called City. Please forgive him.
Yes.
Because that's a picture that's being drawn up there. So please give us the structure. Tell us about the judicial and independence that judges actually do enjoy in this country, and give people clarity. Because if that's not explained, then the conspiratory ideas that are being propagated seem to find legs.
That's true.
Yeah, because you remember, Moi had a red phone that used to go to whichever judge he wants. Does that red phone still exist?
So we are told.
Yes, so we are told.
That's an excellent question.
Yes.
The Chief Justice today cannot pick up the phone and call a magistrate who was appointed yesterday, who still doesn't have experience, and direct that magistrate at the lowest level to make a decision one way or the other. In fact, if that magistrate is sufficiently courageous, can take that matter to the commission and say, the Chief Justice picked up the phone and told me, with regard to this matter, rule in this way or the other way. What am I saying? The decisional, what we call decisional independence, means that every magistrate, every kadhi, every judge is responsible for their decision. We do not have a chain of command like you would have, for example, in the police or in the disciplined forces. You don't have that in the judiciary. That is why you have an appeal structure right from the beginning. So let that magistrate make their decision, hear the case, make their decision. If the person does not agree with that decision, then you move to the next level and up and up and up. And just to, to break this down further, the court structure, we start right from down. We have the magistrates' courts. The magistrate courts listen to, things of limited value across the board.
Yeah.
In civil matters, then you also have criminal matters.
Yes.
From the magistrates courts and other courts at that level, like the Cadi's courts, they deal with matters, on that lower scale.
Yes.
Cadi's courts, of course, deal with matters to do with Islamic law, things to do with succession and all. But from the magistrates courts, you then go to the high court. So if there is a matter that you are not satisfied with, then you appeal.
Yes.
Okay.
You go to the high court, or you can go to the court of what you call a court of equal status, the Employment and Labor Relations Court, dealing with employment matters, or the Environment and Land Court, dealing with land matters. Should you not be satisfied there, then there is an avenue for some cases to go to the Court of Appeal. Then from the Court of Appeal again, should you not be satisfied, you can go to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
But of course, there's a definition of which are some of the matters that can go. There are some matters that in terms of appeal, they may end at the High Court if they're coming from the Magistrates Court. Then others that start from the High Court could go right all the way to the Supreme Court, or sometimes end at the Court of Appeal level. So nobody can call a judicial officer, magistrate, Qadi, whoever, you cannot call and tell them to rule one way or the other. That is very serious misconduct. So sometimes when you see the judiciary is being blamed, the judiciary has decided that this is how the law is going to be changed. It is not really the judiciary. On the one hand, it is not really the judiciary. It is the law that we gave ourselves as a country, and that is the best practice across the world.
Yeah.
That an individual has got decisional independence so that they can make that decision without interference from anybody, including the Chief Justice, including whoever it is. Let them make that decision. And that way, we are able to maintain a very good balance in terms of justice. It is not about whom do you know, who is, who has got more power.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the work of the Chief Justice, or like in the courts we have what we call presiding judges in charge of those courts, or heads of station.
Wait, define presiding judges.
All right.
Like the Court of Appeal has a president, I think.
The Court of Appeal has a president.
Okay.
So what we have in the, let's start from the Supreme Court.
Okay.
The Supreme Court has got somebody who is in charge of that Supreme Court. It happens to be the Chief Justice. So the Chief Justice is the president of the Supreme Court. So you're both the Chief Justice and the head of that court as the president.
Okay. So the head of that court.
The head of that court.
Not the head of courts.
Now, on the other hand, as the Chief Justice again, now administratively, the whole judiciary is under you.
Yes.
So we distinguish
that
that.
administratively
Administratively.
is the whole judiciary.
Exactly.
But court-wise, she's the president of the Supreme Court.
President of the Supreme Court, but even that is administrative because, again, even in that court, the Chief Justice cannot tell this judge in the Supreme Court, this is what you'll do, this is what you'll do. So it is the person who is sort of coordinating. Let's call it like a coordinator. At the Court of Appeal, you have the president of that court, who again is the first among equals, just to organize the operations of that court. Then when you now go to the other courts I talked about, the High Court has a principal judge.
Okay.
The principal judge is responsible for all the High Court judges across the country. So again, that is an administrative function, a coordination function. It is not to interfere with their decisional independence. The Employment Court has also got a principal judge. The Environment Court, the same. Then when you go down now to the court stations, the ones across the country, in each of those court stations, we have got what we call a head of station. A head of station is a magistrate. The highest magistrate in that station in terms of, their ranking.
Yes.
So typically, if you have a chief magistrate, it will be either that, if it's a principal magistrate, and considering other factors. But typically, it will be one of the seniors in the station.
Yes.
So that person is responsible for the functioning of the court at that level. So they would see how is the performance here, in charge of the staff complement, what are the things we need to do to achieve our role here as the court. How are we engaging with our stakeholders in that particular court, but never to call a magistrate in that station and tell them, there's someone who came to see me yesterday, and I'd like you to really consider.
Yeah.
This person has been, they've done one or two things, or rule in this way. They cannot do that.
They can't do that.
They cannot.
So they're bound by a particular conduct.
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody's bound by that conduct.
All right. I would imagine that the same conduct then is what judicial officers are bound by when it comes to issues of corruption.
Yes.
And of course, it's a big ticket item. And I know that in these conversations, we just know that in the conversations that people will come out and have tomorrow, quite a significant amount of them would probably be individual issues that they have had using the courts or my lawyer and conduct of lawyers and things like that. The individual experience will probably take quite a good chunk of those conversations and what you would do about them. But in the periphery of mind is this issue that we see kind of doing the rounds. And far be it from us not to mention it and say, okay, so then when we talk about being bound by a code of conduct, and it would come as a question, then how do you deal with the issues, overt or not, as they may be, when it comes to issues of corruption within the judiciary? Because it'll affect my case that I bring to court today, or somebody brings me to court, if the mere whiff of a suggestion that officer could be compromised in one way or another. How do we deal with that?
That's a very good question. And let me just start from the point of saying that, a lot of things about corruption, first of all, are perception. And I'll be the last person to sit here and defend corruption. And I will say, we, first of all, as an administration, as a leadership, we do not tolerate corruption. What happens, though, for these matters to be dealt with is that where somebody has got, some evidence about some corrupt conduct, it is important that that evidence is brought together with accompanying the complaint, so that it can then be processed. Remember, the system that we have in our country, our justice system, is what we call adversarial system, where you give your side of the story, another person gives their side of the story, and then you have an independent umpire or a referee to listen to this case. So, invariably, what we have found is that many of the complaints that are given, you find that somebody was just unhappy about the outcome of a case.
Okay.
So we take this case to court, and everybody, of course, is hoping for a positive outcome for their matter, but it goes the other way. And then you find all these suggestions flying that it must be because this other person was compromised. And you find many of those matters, when they are brought to the commission, because those are the matters that now come to the commission dealing with those complaints. When you ask for evidence, somebody says, but if you look at the way this judge or magistrate decided on this particular case, there is no way they'd have found that this was the outcome. They refused to listen to me, they blah blah blah, those kind of things. And when the commission looks at that, the commission just says, look, this for us is what we call a merit-based complaint. That the court, having heard everything it did, made this decision, but this other person was unhappy, and therefore they are almost using the commission as an appeal, as an avenue for appeal
of their case.
And that is why it is important, if you have very specific evidence, something to suggest. It could be a text message. It could be something from someone saying, bring this thing here or whatever. When that is brought, then that is looked at a different level. Because remember, as we said, the decisional independence means that if I make a decision that you are not happy with, then you take it to the next level, so that way then that matter can be challenged at that level. And we have seen in the justice system, and not just in Kenya, across the world, a matter starts from down, it goes to the High Court, the High Court overturns it, it goes to the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal says, no, High Court, you are wrong, the lower court was right. So, and in all those instances, we have, the experience we have is that there are stories just swirling around that, no, this guy was compromised, others like that. And we have very many stories again of judges, magistrates, who after some years, you are told, in fact, there's one recently who was just telling us, the wife used to be a judicial officer. And the wife was very comfortable just doing her work. And I know them, people of integrity, believe in doing things right. And the magistrate one time was in court, made a decision, gave her judgment, and it was against one of the parties, obviously. So this party just stood up in court and said, Madam, mbona unafanya hivyo? Na tulikuwa tumeongea. That is how she got to know something had happened. Because somebody was collecting on her behalf. In her name. So a member of the public thinks this definitely is a syndicate here.
Yes.
So we need to just be aware that that does exist.
Riddle me this. There's a society, it's called the Law Society of Kenya.
Yes.
Which essentially represents lawyers. It even has 2 seats, I think, in the Judicial Service Commission.
Yes, 2 seats.
How is the relationship, and not the legal, court relationship, but the relationship between the Law Society and the judiciary? How is that managed? Because a lot of the time, the people, in fact, I don't think normal Kenyans complain about courts as much as lawyers do. And I'm curious, this society called Law Society and the judiciary, how is that relationship?
I would say it's the wearer of the shoe who feels the pinch. So maybe Mwananchi, because they may not interact as closely as the Law Society, they may not feel some of the pain points. And I'm not here to say that we are perfect. There are issues that we are also dealing with and grappling with. If I may tell you the example of what we call the e-filing, electronic filing of all our matters across the country. I tell you that at the beginning, of course, like any new system, we had teething problems, and you are trying to do this, the internet is down, you are trying to upload stuff. The people, some of the greatest, the biggest resistance we had was from some lawyers. Because they were like, now this thing is not working, the system is down and all. Mwananchi may not know that. But the same lawyers today now are the ones who are like, this thing is good because I can sit in my office in Nairobi and I can prosecute a matter in Kajiado.
Yes.
I'll be listening to another one in Malindi, in the High Court, and the last one in Nanyuki. And I don't have to spend money having either travel, and of course, if it's traveling, I'll only go to one location.
Yes.
So now, because this matter is at 10, this other one is at 12, the other one is in the afternoon, I can save on that cost and be able to do it here.
Indeed.
So they are the ones who may feel some of the issues, and sometimes, unfortunately, as it's just a human thing, you tend to be very critical of something that you are close to. Not necessarily that it is bad, but if 2 out of 20 things are not working, so when you talk about the 2 things, it looks like, there is a whole problem, but we have a whole 18 things that are working.
This situation that we discuss, yes, it is true what you say, but it goes beyond that in this sense. We have a situation where, at one level, people are simply resisting change. And that's a human thing. They're used to doing things in a certain way. They're used to moving files, because file is a physical thing, and a human being has to move it. And that human being, at your behest, could move it wherever you want it to go, as opposed to going where it should. Then there is an onslaught, and it's clear and it's obvious. There is the assumption that what we're discussing only happens in this country. In the US, after the election that President Biden won, something happened on Capitol Hill. And the aftermath was interesting because the gentleman who lost the election and who is currently the president of the US accused the Senate, accused the judicial system, accused the police. Everyone was against him. Yet, when matters were taken to court, there was evidence that he had actually asked certain electoral officials in the state of Georgia to overturn the results. They said, these are the results. But he said, no, guys. There was evidence he actually communicated that. In the UK, we had similar problems during Boris, where we had a case where people were seeking asylum. Remember, there was this talk of take them to Rwanda first, where some of them may be domiciled, okay? And again, at that point in time, the attack was on the judiciary and on lawyers who were bringing these matters to the courts. It was lawyers were threatened. Judicial officers were called names. Essentially, it was the politicians who went completely and utterly rogue.
Yes.
Now, we have something similar here, where the judiciary makes decisions, and you will find certain select politicians coming out to actually point fingers and say they can't be right. And you're thinking, Chief, you're not even a lawyer. I mean, so why is it that you are offering an opinion on a subject that you are really not the best person to do so? When you talk of independence within the judiciary, are we therefore saying that the independence is under threat?
Especially in the last 2-3 months?
We are very firm, I will tell you that, as the judiciary, because we realize if you allow that threat or any appearance of threat to get to you, then you are going to have a society that is going down the drain. Obviously, in terms of parties wanting to have their own way, and this being an adversarial system, everybody would want to try and do things one way or the other. But it is extremely important that the independence of the institution is protected. And that is why, by law, one of the responsibilities of the Judicial Service Commission is to promote, actually protect the independence of the judiciary. So threats can come from different places for whatever reasons. And one of the things that we have publicly said, the Chief Justice has said that, and I have had the pleasure to listen to the two former Chief Justices speak at a function. And what they said is very poignant. They said, would you know, and it was a function where we had politicians, different politicians. This is what they said. They said, the greatest beneficiaries of an independent judiciary, probably more than the other people, is you politicians. Because you need to have a strong, independent judiciary that will stand firm, be an independent umpire, irrespective of whatever is brought before that judiciary. If you don't have a strong judiciary that is independent, it could stand for you today, but tomorrow
it would fall.
Talk
about two sacks, one empty, one full. Thank you so much for being our guest this hour. The Honourable Paul Ndemo is the Deputy Chief Registrar as well as Judiciary spokesperson, and those insights have been very interesting for us to have today. We look forward to discussing with you in the future. Good morning. It's 9:01.
Thank you.
Good morning.